Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world that might have once existed. A world whispered through millennia, carried by waves, buried under sediments, disguised as myth yet refusing to die. Tonight, I want to take you by the hand and bring you somewhere between history and possibility, where truth and imagination blur. Let's walk together into the story of Atlantis, not as a legend repeated by textbooks, but as a question aimed directly at you. What if it was real? And what if pieces of it still echo around us today? The story begins, as you know, with Plato. But pause before you picture him as the father of philosophy. Imagine instead a man recounting something he himself heard secondhand, something old even in his time, a tale passed down through Egyptian priests, speaking of a powerful island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Plato wasn't writing fantasy. He was warning about hubris, corruption, the fall of empires. And yet, he chose to ground his warning in a very precise description: the size, the structure, the rings of land and water, the fleets, the temples. Why so detailed if it was merely symbolic? Why give such life to a world that never existed? Some argue he didn't. Some argue he remembered. Imagine Atlantis as he described it: a circular island, technologically advanced, wealthy beyond imagination, a naval superpower. A place where the gods supposedly mingled with mortals, where Poseidon shaped the very land itself. And imagine it falling, not slowly, not gradually, but in a single day and night of earthquakes and floods. A whole civilization swallowing itself into the depths. A city going silent, leaving nothing behind but ripples in the collective memory of humanity. But myths don't survive thousands of years without a reason. And that's where things get interesting. Because around the world, far from Greece, people tell stories of great cities that disappeared beneath the sea. Stories from indigenous cultures, from the Middle East, from South America. Civilizations wiped out by water. Islands sinking overnight. Ancient lands swallowed by angering gods or by the shifts of the earth itself. How is it that unrelated cultures, separated by oceans and eras, echo the same pattern? Did they all just invent the same fear? Or did they carry fragments of something we've forgotten? Let me bring you to the island of Santorini, to the site of Akrotiri, a Bronze Age city frozen in volcanic ash, its streets, its walls, its pottery, remarkably advanced, remarkably peaceful, and remarkably destroyed around 1600 BCE by an eruption so massive it shook continents. This eruption created a tsunami, one that could have swept entire cultures off coastlines. Some believe Santorini is the origin of the Atlantis story, that the Minoans, the masters of the Mediterranean, were the real Atlanteans. Their power, their trade network, their sophistication, gone in a geological heartbeat, a memory surviving only in stories. But maybe the truth is not so simple. Maybe Atlantis isn't one place. Maybe it's a pattern, a cycle human civilizations have repeated again and again. Think of Dwarka in India, once thought entirely mythical until divers found stone structures off the coast. Think of Yonaguni near Japan with its underwater terraces and pillars. Natural, some say, but too perfect to dismiss completely. Think of Pavlopetri in Greece, a submerged city over 5,000 years old. Think of Herakleion, lost near the Nile Delta and rediscovered underwater as if time held its breath, waiting for someone to notice. Civilizations disappear more often than we realize. The earth changes, water rises, land shifts. Humanity forgets. If so many cities have drowned, is it really impossible that one more once existed? But the question isn't only about the past, it's also about the present. Because while we look for Atlantis in lost worlds, something eerily similar might be happening before our eyes. Look at Venice, a city built on water, shaped by trade, beauty, and power, just like the legends of Atlantis describe. A place whose identity is intertwined with the sea that now threatens to reclaim it. Scientists predict that Venice will keep sinking, centimeter by centimeter, year by year. The Acqua Alta floods more frequently. The Meuse barriers hold back the sea for now, but for how long? Picture Venice not in the postcards you know, but abandoned, quiet, slowly submerged, future divers swimming where tourists once walked. a modern Atlantis forming in real time. What causes a city to vanish? Natural disaster, geological shifts, climate change, war, neglect, or sometimes simply that the world moves on and doesn't look back until centuries later. Maybe we are living in a moment where myth and reality overlap, where we can see the pattern that ancient people could only tell as a story. Earthquakes reshape coastlines, volcanoes tear islands apart, rising seas swallow land, civilizations collapse under their own weight. The idea of Atlantis becomes less a fantasy and more a recurring warning written into the planet itself. So ask yourself, what if Atlantis wasn't just a place? What if it was a message? What if it was humanity's memory of what happens when we forget how fragile our world truly is? As you listen to this, water continues to rise in cities around the globe. Coastlines retreat, islands shrink. Places we take for granted today may one day be whispered about the same way Plato whispered about Atlantis. Not because they were magical, but because they were lost. Maybe Atlantis existed exactly as described. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it was many cities. Maybe it was a metaphor. But the deeper question is this: why does the story still feel so real? Why, every generation, do we return to it as if trying to remember something? Maybe because somewhere, deep within us, we know that the ocean keeps secrets. It hides histories, it buries truths. And every once in a while, a piece resurfaces, a ruined stone, a submerged temple, a myth that refuses to die. Tonight, as you think about Atlantis, think also about the world we live in now, about the cities rising proudly along coastlines, about the delicate balance between land and sea, about the patterns we've ignored and the warnings we keep repeating. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, some disappear under the waves, some leave only questions behind. And maybe, someday, someone will ask about us the same way we ask about Atlantis. Did they really exist? What happened to them? Why did they vanish? In the end, the mystery of Atlantis is not just about a sunken city. It's about the thin line between memory and myth, and the possibility that the past is not as distant as we think.